All right, in this lecture, we're going to focus on how we can find the user's location. So we're not really concerned about the map stuff, about displaying where the current user is. It's more about we just want to find out their latitude and longitude, be able to track movements there. How do we get the permissions for that to happen? There's a whole sort of process that we've got to follow for this. So let's go ahead and start a new Android Studio project. We're going to go ahead and call this location demo. And we'll just do our defaults. We want the blank activity. Again, we don't need to work with the map stuff on this one. So we'll go ahead and move forward here. So like I said, the very first thing that we want to move forward with before we do anything is that we've got to get permission from the user in order to access their location, right? Which makes sense. It'd be kind of creepy if an app's tracking your location and you had no idea about it. Like, you want to be able to give that app that permission. And it's the exact same process about when we ask the user if we can use their internet connection. It's inside that Android manifest where we go ahead and ask for that piece of information. So what we're going to do is we'll open up our app here and double click on our manifest. And just like we do up at the top here, we're going to go ahead and do our angled bracket here. And we'll give Android Studio a second. I'm trying to get going right off the go, but it's, it just finished putting all this stuff together for us. So let's see. We'll come here and wait a second. There we go. So we are looking for a uses permission. There we go. And when we do this, there's all sorts of options here. And the one that we're looking for is access fine control. Now, there is course control. The difference between the two is that fine is like really specifically looking for where the device is, like it really utilizes the GPS, whereas the course more just sort of uses Wi-Fi and the network pinpointing of stuff. So if you don't need as precise as stuff, you can probably roll with course. But if you really need to know, for most, I think, mapping applications, you're going to want to use a fine location. But again, that's up to you, and you want to be conscious of how much battery you're using on the user's device. So we'll use find location, and we'll end up that tag right there. So that's everything we need to do to get the user's permission. Then let's go ahead and move into our main activity, and we're going to start writing some code in order to get the user's location. So if you've ever worked with iOS before, you'll see that this situation is pretty similar. Basically, we create something called a location manager that manages all our location tracking. And then we have this location listener that gives us updates about whenever the user says yes or no to things, or if they're going to, whenever the device moves, it sort of gives an update there. We're going to create all of those. So the first one that we need is a location manager. And we're just going to go ahead and call that location manager. And we'll set this equal to this dot get system service. Okay. And then inside of here, we're going to say capital context dot, and we want to get location service. Okay. So this tells us, hey, we want to create this location manager that's going to, get the user's location. And with this, we need to go ahead and actually cast this to say that this should be a location manager. All right, that'll get rid of our first error there for us. We're gonna have more in a second here, but just give this a moment. The next thing that we want to do is we want to create our location listener. So we want location listener, and let me go ahead and hit enter so we get that import. And we'll say location listener is equal to a new location listener. And you can see when we do the autocomplete for that, poof, it brings up a lot of stuff. So there's a couple of different functions here. The big one that you want to focus on that is this on location change. So this is when, all of a sudden we get, the device moved this much further, that much further, or just this is regular updates from the GPS telling us, hey, things have changed here. You should know about it. This on status change, this is telling us, hey, the user either said yes to working with this, they said no to working with it, stuff like that. It's kind of the big stuff there, the saying, hey, whether or not this is all working. So on location change, we want to know whether or not we are able to get the user's location here. And so let's just go ahead and log out this information. So we'll say log I, and let's just say this is going to be location. And then for our second parameter here, we're going to take the location that we get right there, and we can actually turn that into a string if we do .toString. Okay, so that'll be something readable that we can actually go ahead and check out. Now, in order for us to get any of this information, I know that we have a location manager, I know that we have a location listener, and I know that we in the manifest said, hey, we need the user's permission, but we actually have to write the code to ask for permission from the user. So in order to get this, we're going to go outside of this location listener. So we want to, and don't forget we need a semicolon there. But we want to go outside of this location listener. So down below here, we're going to do a big if statement where we can check and see if the user has granted us permission. So what we're going to do is we're going to first reference context, okay, context compact dot, and we want check self permission. And in this, there's a couple of things that we want to provide. So first, that's going to be the context that it needs. The next piece of information it needs is asking, what sort of permission it is that we're looking for. So we're going to say here manifest dot permission dot, and this is where we want to say access, capital access, find location. Remember when we were choosing between find location and course location, that's what that's all about there. So that's closed up in that parentheses, and we want to know if this is not equal to capital package manager dot, and in all capitals, permission granted. So what we're checking for here is before we ask for permission, we're saying, hey, did they give us permission to access the find location? And we're saying if they didn't give us this permission, this is where we would want to move forward and ask for that. So the code that we would run is activity compact. I guess I should just type that out. Here we go. Activity compact. Okay. And we're going to say dot request permission, permissions with an S, and we'll say this for the context. The next thing is we need to provide that we're looking for the access of find control. So we're actually going to create a little string array thing here. We're going to say new capital string array. And then in here, right afterwards, we are going to provide some curly brackets. And we are going to say inside, there we go, inside these curly brackets, manifest dot permission dot, and it's that same access find location. Okay, so we're asking for that, and after we've done that, so after that ending curly bracket, we're going to go ahead and provide the number 1. Now you might be wondering, well, what is this number about? Well, when we go ahead and ask for this, you can keep these numbers to keep track of, which they call them request codes you were looking for, but we don't really care. We're only asking for 1 permission here, so we'll just kind of keep that as is. So let's go ahead and test and see if this works. When the app opens up, please don't automatically say yes to granting the permission. We just want to check and see if our message is even showing up here, right? So, because we don't have anything right now that we, basically we create the location manager and listener, but we never activate them. We just want to make sure that we can at least get the message that says, hey, here is the question asking you if we can use your location. Okay, so we'll go ahead and wait by the emulator here just for a second. Looks like it's taking a little bit of time here, but look at that, it finished up. So up it pops, and you'll see when the app opens up, it's asking, allow location demo to access this device location. So it's got that option there for us, and it could be really tempting to go say allow or deny, but there's a little bit more code that we want to write for this. So what we're going to do is we're going to move up top, and there's a particular method that we want to implement that tells us when someone is requesting permission and they've either said yes or no to that question. So if you just start typing on request permission result, there we go. If you hit enter on that, it's going to implement a ton of stuff here, kind of get you the basics of what you need. But and this tells us whether or not the user said yes or no to granting their permission. So the first thing that we want to do is check and see if we got permission. So the way that we can do this is we're going to make an if statement. And in this if statement, the first thing that we're going to ask is, okay, if the grant results. So we'll go ahead and say grant results, and this is passed in over here. So we're going to say if grant results dot length is greater than 0. That's the first check that we want to do. And then we're going to say and by doing 2 ampersamps. So we want that to be true, and we want to say grant results access the first item in that array. So we check this first to make sure there was at least something in there. So we'll say, and if there is something, we'll go ahead and look at the first option and see if this is equal to, we need 2 equal signs, package manager dot, and this is where we want the capital permission granted. So this will tell us yes or no whether or not they said yes to us. So if this is the case, we want to start working with the location manager and the listener. So I'm actually going to copy these 2 things and add them as properties up to the top there, define them there. So we've got location manager and listener. All right, and then we'll update this on create so that we're not redefining there. Just go ahead and update that. Okay, so with those in place, now we can write this cool line of code where we say, okay, location manager. Remember, everything sort of moves through the manager. We're going to say location manager dot, and we're going to ask for location updates, saying, hey, anytime you move, update, whatever, we want to know about it. So we're going to say request location updates. All right, and there's a couple of things that we got to pass in here. So the first thing that we need to do is say that we are looking for information from the GPS. So we're going to say location manager, and this is capital location manager dot, and there's a couple options here, but we want GPS provider. So we'll go ahead and select that one. The next thing that it's looking for is, how much you want to be updated about things. So in our case, we're going to put 0 for the time, and if you hit comma, it's also going to ask for the distance. We're going to put 0 there. And that's basically saying, hey, we could just update your information every couple of seconds, or maybe every minute, or whatever it is, and or only update when the user moves more than like 10 meters. And again, these are measures that we can use to save the user some battery life. But in this case, we're just trying to figure out this location thing. So we want to use 0 minutes, 0 meters, meaning that we just want all the information. Give us any sort of update that you have about the user's location. Okay. And then after that, you can see it's looking for a location listener, which we have already created. So we're just going to go ahead and pass in our location listener. All right. So that's all the code that we need, except you'll see that we get this big nasty error here, and it is asking us that, hey, you've got to do one more check to make sure that this is actually okay. So we can actually just go ahead and do the check that we do down here, this big if statement that we make sure that we have access to do this. So I'll just go ahead and copy the top part of this if statement, including that curly bracket, and we'll just paste it above here, and we'll do an ending curly bracket down below so that sort of wraps everything up. And the big thing that we want to check here is that this is equal to permission granted, because down here we're saying, hey, if the permission hasn't been granted, then we want to go request it. Whereas in this situation, we're saying, okay, if we did get permission granted, then we want to go ahead and do this. So I know a little bit crazy that we have to provide this question twice, and I just realized I've put this if statement in the wrong location. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this and cut it, and we're going to put it, the first thing that we want to check for is that top level if statement here, right, where we check to see if the length is greater than 0 and all that stuff, and then we'll do this one. Okay, so with those things in place, let's go ahead and check out our app. So we'll go ahead and hit the run button here on the simulator, and we'll see what it is that we get. So let me go ahead and open up our device. So we're going to say allow to this. So, and I'm not exactly sure where the app went. Let's try this one more time. Okay, app opens up, and if we go ahead and check our logs, hopefully we have a location here. And I'm looking for a location, but I never saw one. And that could have been because before we hit OK there, we had entered in that we had already wanted to give permission. So I kind of ruined that special moment because this was supposed to show you how all of that worked. But I'm going to show you how we can fix this, because right now we're only asking for the user's location updates, which is really, that tells us when we get the information. We're only asking for that when the user says yes to it. So if the user's already said yes, this method never gets called. And so in that case, we'd want to do an else statement here that basically says, hey, if the user has already given us permission, then it's appropriate for you to go ahead and ask for some updates. So let's go ahead and scroll up here. We're just going to copy this line exactly where we basically say, hey, go ahead and give us the update. So we'll copy this, paste it down below. And now let's try running this in our app. So we'll make sure we got Logcat up and running here so we can see this. Man, I do all that work to tell you not to touch the thing, and then I go ahead and touch it at the wrong time. I feel foolish about that. But here we go. Now you might be a little bit disappointed saying, we didn't get the location showing up here. What the heck's going on with that? Well, with the emulator, we have to sort of manually give some of the location stuff. So to the right of the emulator, if you hit this little dot, it shows you some of the controls that you can affect. And if you click on location here, you can actually provide a latitude and a longitude. So I think this right now is centered on San Francisco. So if we hit send here, look at that. It prints out the location, which means that we got to this point in our code, right? Like we were able to log this information. And it's pretty cool that, we can put in any sort of latitude and longitude that we want. Like I could send this, for example, and boom, all of a sudden that comes through 5464, okay? So there you have it. Like I said, not super exciting because, we don't have this on a map or anything, but that's what we're going to be covering in our next lecture. And it's going to be a cool challenge for you because you've learned a lot of stuff. It's now time to sort of bring it all together. So let's go ahead and talk about it in the next lecture.